Are we going? Okay, we're here live. Welcome. Okay.
Hello.
Hello, audience. Welcome to this wonderful virtual launch / hello event for Bluebird by Ciel Pierlot, who is here with us in marvelous electronic cat ear headphones.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will be hosting this thing. I'm Foz Meadows. I am a yeller on the internet and writer of queer fantasy novels, also through Angry Robot, including An Accident of Stars and A Tyranny of Queens. The way we're going to do this is I am going to introduce Ciel. We're going to have one question that I will ask them to describe the book. We will have a passage from the book, and then we will have more questions. And at the end, we will have some audience questions. So, Ciel, right.
Yes, hello.
Hello. Describing you, this is your about the author. Ciel Pierlot is a disaster bisexual from the San Francisco Bay Area. She's also a giant nerd, and no, you cannot stop her from bragging about her lightsaber collection. When she's not writing SFF novels, she's busy being a digital artist and a hardcore gamer. Anything you'd care to add to that?
Yes, gamer is spelled with a Y.
Very important.
It's an important distinction.
It is. How are you doing this morning? We all good?
Yeah, doing good. Minor technical issues, but, welcome to life.
Yeah. This is the thing with technical issues and computers. They wait until you have something important to do and then they pounce.
Oh, they always do. It's like, oh gosh, it's like when you have a kettle and it waits to break until you really need tea.
Yes.
Which has happened to me many times, and I don't like it.
This is the way of appliances. They sense weakness.
They do.
Okay, so we're going to start this off. I'm going to ask you to pitch us Bluebird based on the vibes.
So the vibe of Bluebird is sort of sapphic cowboy bebop, sort of be gay, do crime, but if you really like spies and fist fights and shootouts, and if you liked that one episode of Firefly where they had to go to a party, that episode. We all know that episode of Firefly. If you like that episode of Firefly, you're probably going to like a solid chunk of Bluebird.
Excellent. Okay, so with that as this sort of establishing thing, do you want to give us the proper blurb now and then launch into a reading?
Yes, I have the proper blurb here. Rig, gunslinger, outlaw, thief. She and her ship, Bluebird, have spent years keeping a single step ahead of the factions of the galaxy's factions and their age-old game. But the game just got deadly serious. Pyrite has Rig's sister, and Rig has something they want. If she doesn't hand it over, her sister dies. With panache and pizzazz, a librarian girlfriend, and a lethal bounty hunter as a passenger, Rig's here to be gay, do crime, and hopefully not die in the process.
Excellent. All right, so now we're going to have, drum roll, you're going to read us an excerpt. And this is from chapter 2, I believe?
Yes. It is, I believe. Let me double check that. Don't quote me on anything. Is this chapter 2? Maybe not. No, this is chapter 1.
Ooh, chapter 1.
Chapter 1, but after the prologue, so chapter 2. A rifle is pointed at Rig's head. You are under arrest. Even her lungs seem to stop moving. Her eyes dart to the man pointing a weapon at her, and she can see the shiny red armor underneath the civilian coat. Ugh, they're hiding in the crowd. Of course she didn't notice. Why couldn't she use her brain for 1 minute and realize that's what they'd be doing? It's what she'd do, after all. After so long chasing her, she should have expected that they'd pick up on a few of her tricks. And half her usual kit would take civilians out in a burst of fire, and she refuses to drag a bunch of innocent people into her mess. All she's really got are her guns. What can she do? 2 thoughts filter to the surface. Firstly, that they are going to take her alive. If she's dead, she can't give them the research, her research, that they want. And second, that there are more than just this one. I understand, she tells the soldier. Deep breath in. She flashes her left arm up and wraps it around his wrist, digging into the soft spots between his armor until she hears something snap and the gun drops. Her right hand goes for one of his guns. She spins on the balls of her feet, pushing the man to his knees and yanking his arm behind his back until the slightest movement would cause him to dislocate. She puts her gun to the back of his head. Shoot me and your friend dies, she calls out. They're listening. She knows they are. I'm not messing around. A scream goes out to the atrium and people begin to panic. Stand down, a new voice says. 3 more pyrite soldiers emerge from the crowd, weapons in hand and aimed straight at her. The crowd scatters like a school of fish facing a shark, but there's nowhere to go. The atrium isn't designed for mass evacuation. There's no flashing sign marked exit. The crowd parts away from the confrontation, sure enough, but they can't get far. One of the pyrite soldiers reaches out and snatches a civilian. Fuck. He holds the woman in one arm and with the other puts a pistol to her temple. Release our comrade and stand down, or else we'll kill her. You're opposed to civilian casualties, are you not? We were told you no longer have the taste for that sort of thing. Rig's hand is shaking. The civilian woman opens her mouth. Rig braces for her scream, but instead the only sound that comes out is a calm, I suggest you release me. Rig blinks. The pyrite soldiers glance down at the woman, their helmeted faces reflecting her dispassionate features. The roar of the crowd quiets. Everything seems to fade away, as if the galaxy is focusing on the unfamiliar woman. Does she not know the sort of things pyrite will do? The woman looks down at the arms across her neck with apathetic disdain. She's a Zazara, like Mosen's bodyguard. Ugh, I won't ask again. She glances between the soldiers, one eyebrow arched in a silent question. Their blank helmets turn to look at one another, and Rig can only imagine that the confusion on their faces is a mirror of her own. When none of them reply, the Zazara lets out an exasperated sigh. Fine. She moves. Her body is almost a blur as she grabs the soldier's arm, drops to one knee, and throws the large man over her body like a sack of feathers. His back smacks against the ground with a sort of bone-deep crack that would have made Rig wince if she weren't staring, slack-jawed, as the woman brings her boot down on the man's helmet. There's a metallic groan of the helmet giving way, and then a wet squelch that makes Rig gag. The Zazara turns to the other 2 soldiers. One shoots. She's already dodged before he pulls the trigger. She twists around his gun to grab the barrel and then uses it to yank the soldier towards her, letting him fall into her fist. The chest plating caves into his solar plexus with a sickening crunch beneath her hands. She spins around, using the body she's holding to block the rain of bullets that the last soldier unleashes upon her, and then she tosses the corpse onto the remaining soldier. He throws his dead comrade to the side, just in time to get a spinning kick to the head. The man goes down. Blood as red as his armor splatters the ground beneath his shattered helmet. Fuck, Rig thinks, and then again for good measure, holy fuck! The Zazara woman bends down to pick up a black duffel bag that she must have dropped when the pyrite soldier grabbed her. Smears of blood dot the silvery gauntlets she's wearing. Well, she asks Rig. Rig tries to make her mouth cooperate. She sighs, bending down to pick up one of the dead soldier's guns, and then shoots the man that Rig has pinned. Rig feels strangely detached from her own body. She lets the corpse fall without taking her eyes off the woman. Who is she? How did she... Rig has never seen anyone face pyrite, or any faction soldiers for that matter, and come out without a scratch, let alone take out 4 of them without breaking a sweat. A siren screams through Red Dock. Damn it! The Zazara spins around, holding up one hand in a loose fist. Bright red lights start to flash as a monotone voice comes through the speakers, demanding they cease and desist. Another squad of soldiers is pushing through the atrium, weapons raised and ready to fire as soon as they clear the crowd. The Zazara slings her bag over her shoulder. They sent for backup. Why are those bastards after you anyways? That's a long story, Rig replies, wide eyes staring at the approaching pyrite soldiers. They need to run. She's screaming at her legs to move, but she can't quite manage anything more than a tremble. Really long. I see. The Zazara slides her feet into a low crouch, one armored hand brushing against the floor like an animal preparing to pounce. She's not going to... she is. Although Rig doesn't know if this woman can fight off dozens of pyrite soldiers, she also would really prefer not to find out. The Zazara can do what she wants with her life, but if Rig doesn't get the fuck out now, she's going to die. Or, more likely, be tortured until she sings the pyrite's tune and then die. Ugh. Did my helmet go? Fuck. Okay. Hold on. Sorry, my mic's gone. My bad. Give me a second.
That's how we can hear you.
Well, no, I mean... Okay, give me... All right. My apologies. In a burst of desperation, she grabs a handful of the woman's shirt and tugs her away from the rapidly approaching enemies. Run, she yells. I have a ship. We can make it. For a moment, she thinks the woman is going to protest, and then she's running after Rig. They crash through the atrium, Rig with far less dignity than her strange new associate. Bullets crack past them as the pirates open fire. One tears through Rig's shirt, and another cuts a hole in her headscarf. At least it isn't her ear. She jumps a crate and then turns down a corridor, crashing into the wall in her haste. Her palms slap against the metal before she's off again, her heart beating wildly against her rib cage. Left! She calls out to the Zazara, who's already a number of feet ahead of her. They skid left down a smaller corridor. I hope you have a plan, the Zazara yells over her shoulder as they book it down the corridor, dodging bullets from a group of pyrite soldiers chasing after them. Plan? I'm running for my life! What part of that says plan? You dared 3 pyrite soldiers to face you and you didn't have a plan? The extent of my plan was to hit them with panache and pizzazz. This isn't the time for theatrics. No, my guns. You named your guns panache and pizzazz? Yeah, what did you name your guns? I don't have guns. Well, that sounds like a mistake. Rig ducks a bullet as they turn another corridor. Considering the circumstances. Rig slams to a stop in front of the right set of doors and throws them open to reveal a small hangar bay. She slides in first and then slams the door behind them. Her ship sits in front of them, and behind it, a vacuum guard field paints a glowing blue tint over the star-filled blackness of space. Normally, she'd love to stop and admire the pretty picture her bucket of bolts makes. Instead, she dashes up the gangplank with the sounds of pyrite bullets shooting the door down on her heels. A blast of fire, grenade, takes down the hangar bay doors. Rig almost fumbles, slamming her hand onto the lock and punching in the code just as the soldiers step over the ruined doors, their limbs dragging lines through the debris and smoke-filled air. Swoosh! Rig has never been so relieved to hear the sound of her ship's hatch sliding closed. Get in! She and the Zazara leap through one after the other, and then she's able to shut the hatch behind them. With a touch to the wall-mounted security panel, a glowing holographic panel springs up at her fingertips. The floors rumble as a blast rocks the ship. The pyrite soldiers have opened fire. Gonna have to read the book to find out what happens next. I don't fucking know.
Excellent. Okay, so we've got a comment saying panache and pizzazz are great names. I agree.
Thank you.
All right, so in writing Bluebird, where did you start? With the setting, the characters, or the idea?
Funnily enough, I actually started with panache and pizzazz. I came up with this idea for sort of like D&D bard style, like Malcolm Reynolds type of character. And I thought it'd be really funny if she had these 2 guns named Panache and Pizzazz. And then I kind of just went from there. Like the story sort of was built around Rig's character and around her personality, and around, me thinking like, oh, well, she's like this now. What happened to her in the past? What would be interesting to, see in her backstory. And I just kind of built around that from there. I love me a whole like troubled backstory type of thing. Again, very Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly.
It's a good starting point, and it's always that nice thing when you're writing and you get like a sort of an idea for a character, and then they're sort of the ones dragging you through the narrative.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So there's multiple humanoid alien races in Bluebird. You mentioned one, the Zazara, in the excerpt. So tell us a bit about them.
So Zazara are sort of most aliens in Bluebird are relatively humanoid. Part of that is just humans have been around for a really long time, and interbred with other alien species, and as a result, you have a lot of standard humanoid aliens, but a lot of them, have many non-human features as well. But Zazara are sort of, they're empaths. So if they touch somebody with their bare hands, they can read their emotions. It's not, telepathy. It is just like a general emotional vibe. They also have cute pointed ears, and they have face markings, and they're definitely not at all completely inspired by cats. They're not cat people, I swear. I would never make a cat alien in my life. I would not do that.
Your headphones.
Exactly. I would never. No, it's not a thing I would do. So that is the type. That is one type of alien. Rig is a Kajrini. They've got like blue skin and no hair at all. So no hair on their head, no eyebrows, no nothing. And as a result, they frequently wear a lot of head coverings because space is cold. And if you don't have hair, your head's going to get cold. And they're generally, they're a type of people that's historically been at the bottom of the ladder, as it were, with humans at the top and then Kajrini pretty near the bottom. So they form the base of a lot of anti-faction movements in the galaxy.
Okay. Those are the main ones. So now, as you said, just faction space. In Bluebird, space is run by 3 main factions: Ascetic, Pyrite, and Ossuary, which are, as best I can, I think a good way of describing them is as competing theocratic capitalist empires. Tell us a bit about how they work.
So they all work in similar but slightly different ways. So, for example, Ascetic is much more, oh, we care about people, we care about the environment, we just want you to be happy, look at how pretty we are. I'm definitely going to ignore all these people that I don't think are pretty. You don't deserve stuff because we don't want to give it to you. Aren't we nice? And then on the other hand, you have...
It's the Instagram, basically.
Right?
Action.
Pretty much. It's the Instagram version of climate change, or climate change activism. Basically, yeah. And then you've got Pyrite, which is very, very heavily capitalist, very all about technological innovation, very much so like, yeah, we're going to work all these people to death and give ourselves some really cool new technology in the process. It's great progression. And then on the third side, you have Ossuary, which is very much so like, very much so Fight Club. The first rule of Ossuary is you don't talk about Ossuary. The second rule of Ossuary is you don't talk about what happens in Ossuary. And if you do, you are dead. Exactly. Oh my God, exactly. Very, very much so information black hole. No one goes in, no one comes out.
Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
I've been in California since I was born and I'm still lost. I don't know how to get out of here.
Well, don't ask me. I made the mistake of coming to live here. So.
Oh, yeah, you're stuck. I'm sorry. At least we have good avocados. We do have avocados. We do have
good avocados. All right.
I'm seeing in chat which alien faction was my favorite to create. Ossuary, because it has massive edgelord vibes. And I like that type of thing.
Excellent. All right, so tell us how video games have influenced your writing, and if you observed the existence of bald-headed blue aliens, you may have.
I've never seen bald-headed blue aliens in a video game before. Definitely not in any of them. Mass Effect. Mass Effect. No, so I do play a lot of video games, and actually, the video game that probably influenced Bluebird most was Destiny 2. It's a sci-fi video game. And because it's a first-person shooter, there is a lot of focus on like cool weapons and cool guns. And a lot of the tech in Bluebird is hard light technology. Basically, your like energy bullet type of thing. And in Destiny, the like thing that powers your superpower abilities is called light. So it's hard light. Very
cool. All right. So is Bluebird a standalone novel, or do you see yourself writing more in the setting?
It's a standalone novel. I keep getting asked if I'm going to write more for it. So it does keep like turning over in my head. But not to spoil anything for people who haven't read it, which I'm assuming is mostly everybody. The ending for Rig's character felt very satisfying for me. And I felt like if I went back and was like, oh, no, actually, she's got more problems to deal with now. There's some other thing. It would kind of cheapen that. It would be like, oh, well, what was the point of that struggle and her getting some kind of happy ending if, well, now she's just in trouble again. So if I did write anything more for Bluebird, it would probably be with a different cast of characters, either side characters in the main book that, you know, aren't the focus of the narrative, or an entirely different cast in the same universe.
Would you consider like going back, because the whole thing with the factions is that they've been around for 10,000 years. We've got the sort of theocratic underpinnings. So Osiri, Pyrite, and Aesthetic are sort of viewed as gods, as well as being the name of the factions. And it's the sort of part of the reason that they're battling is to say, okay, we have a mythology, a collective mythology where these three gods showed up. Two of them died, and each of us we're all arguing now about whose god is the one that's still alive, which to me is a really compelling and fascinating idea to underpin all of the factionalism. So would you ever consider going back to sort of like the beginning of that and how this got started?
I kind of would. I've been like the one of the ideas I've had, like, oh, if I ever went back to this universe and wrote about a different character, is there's this folklore hero that Rig really respects. His name's Dare. I like fun names like that, as I'm sure you can tell. His name's Dare, and he's like a very early figure in Kajrini. I don't want to say mythology, because he was probably a real person. But their mythos, I guess. It's like one of those people who probably really exists, but what they've become in the stories since their time alive is more important than who they actually were. You know, like Jesus. And I thought it might be interesting to go back and write about, you know, that guy's life and what he was up to in like the very early days where the factions were still just starting to colonize planets and just starting to spread out.
No, that I would be interested in that. I think that's really, and I always really love that when you get stories that show the disconnect between sort of the myth and the legend of somebody versus the reality of somebody. I think that's always a really fascinating tension to use narrative to show, because one part of it is purely fictionalized and the other is still, but you're still using a fictional medium to show that. So I think that could be really fascinating.
Yeah, I really like I tried to put some of this in Bluebird without making it, you know, the overwhelming focus of the narrative, but there is kind of that sense of like, well, what's real, what's false, and does it matter?
So, what's your favorite scene or concept that didn't make it into the final draft?
So actually, in the early version, the scene where there's a scene in the book where Rig tells Genka how she named her ship and how that ties into this story of this folklore hero called Dare. And originally it was a much longer chapter, and it really went into like the full story of who this guy was and the stuff he did that made him so gosh darn impressive. And I do understand why I cut that, and it should have been cut, and it would have been bad pacing if I'd left it in. But I did like that, and it was fun to write.
Cool. And so what's something you want to discuss that I haven't already asked you about?
That's a good question. You asked me this a while ago, and I still haven't come up with an answer. Let's see. Oh, someone's asked, what was the most fun part about making the lore? Most fun part about making the lore was coming up with random stuff. For lore and world building, I would just mostly come up with stuff that I thought was cool. And then eventually I had these piles of cool shit that I would then sort of sort into like world building that made sense and world building that didn't make sense. And I'd kind of like puzzle piece it into something coherent.
That's a lot of like what I do. So I'll get these sort of bits of ideas that kind of sit in the back of the brain and kind of just sort of percolate a bit. And then it's like, do you remember in like, I'm not sure I ever actually did this in science class, but we always used to see kids doing it in science in like American TV shows where you have the little atomic model kits where you've got like, you know, the white and the red, you join them with the...
We did that. We actually do that. I did that. That's a real thing. It's not just on TV.
Yeah, you did that to me. We never did, but I always have that image because we grew up with American TV. where you try and make the molecules. I feel like I've got some little gremlin in the back of my brain who's viewing all of the disparate, like, cool things and random ideas and, in there as, like, little pieces of atoms, and is sitting there with sticks trying to go, nyeh, 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 and connect them together.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
They suddenly sort of stand up and go, I have made a thing.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, oh, this is cool. Let me write it down in a vague chronological order and then come up with random stuff to connect it.
Yeah. We've got another question. What would your ideal writing environment be?
I have it. I have my ideal writing environment. I built my own desktop, which I love dearly, and it is a beautiful computer. It has served me well.
Does it have a name?
It does not have a name. It has a lot of stickers on it, and I bought more stickers, and I'm waiting eagerly for them to arrive because I want to cover my desktop in stickers. I've got some Star Wars stickers, some She-Ra stickers. I've got a big sticker that just says "fuck" in surrounded by flowers, and I ordered some Final Fantasy 14 stickers, and I'm very excited for them to arrive.
Nice. We have a request from Angry Robot to say we want to see the lightsabers.
Okay, so I have a couple within grabbing distance. Hold on.
Show us the sabers. Show us the sabers. Lightsaber, the saber's made of light.
Okay, so my lightsabers. This is the first one I got. I'm going to try and show it to the camera. This is the first one I got. It was from Ultra Sabers. It was my very first, almost like training lightsaber, because all the ones I have are designed for combat, like actual stage fighting and everything. So this one was the first one I got. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out where's a good place for the camera. This is the first one I got. Very basic. I still love it, though. Really nice grip. Relatively inexpensive. And then I got this one from Disneyland, actually. They did they have like a workshop, a lightsaber workshop, where you can kind of build your own lightsaber.
Nice.
It's really heavy. Like, you kind of pay for the experience as well as the actual product. It's really heavy. It is definitely the least durable lightsaber I own. And not gonna lie, fixing the batteries on it is really hard. I recommend you do the Disney thing if you really like Star Wars. And again, you're paying for the experience and the fun of it as well as the actual product. So, and then I have these two. These are a matching set, as you can see. So this one has a red blade and this one has a blue blade. So this is for dual wielding purposes. Nice. And these are my most recent ones. I have others, but they're not within easy grabbing reach. I'd have to dig around and get into my closet for them.
So these have got like blades that extend, I'm assuming.
Yes. So all the blades I have are currently detachable. I wonder if I left the batteries in on this. I did not. I did not leave the batteries in, because you shouldn't leave the batteries in on Ultra Saber or Saber Forge lightsabers. But yeah, basically what they have is they have this like little light guard, so that if you turn it on without a blade in, you don't blind yourself by staring straight at an LED light. But you can remove that and replace it with a blade. So I have some regular length blades, and then I have a couple shorter, more like Shoto style blades that I use for these dual wielding ones.
Nice.
Yeah.
We have never owned a model lightsaber, sadly, but many, many, many years ago, before my husband and I were together, but when we were friends, he at the time was in his 30s and living with another guy in his 30s who had like a proper grown-up adult paycheck. And
I wonder what that's like.
I wonder what that's like. And had at the time, the friend Anthony had bought two replica lightsabers, and these were the ones with the long halogen blades, which looked really cool and would make the noise if you swung them, but you couldn't properly do combat with them because it was halogen, and if you whacked them together too hard, they would break. And so my husband Toby and Anthony would take these lightsabers out, and just like large children playing going through the motions of having a lightsaber battle, but only connecting glass very, very gently. And they were doing this one evening in a suburban neighborhood, near Anthony's flat. And as they were doing it in the middle of the road, as you do, because there wasn't a lot of space on the curb.
Oh, of course.
And a car drove up, and they had to move off the way for the car to go past. And there were in the front were two parents sort of looking at these grown men playing with lightsabers, like, what are you doing? And in the back, as the car continued to go past, were these two children just up against the windows, thinking this was the coolest thing they'd ever seen in their lives. And Toby and Anthony sort of sheepishly looking at each other.
Well, once you get older, you can spend your real adult paycheck on all the crazy shit you wanted when you were a kid.
I know.
And then if other actual adults judge you for it, I mean, who gives a damn, right? Exactly. You've got your lightsabers.
All right, so we've got a question. When you're feeling uninspired, how do you get your creativity flowing?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I'm going to be honest, I generally don't struggle with writer's block that often. I'll generally have like 2 or 3 at least projects that I'm working on at one point in time. So if I get kind of stuck on one writing project, I'll just swap to the other and go back and forth. Sometimes it'll be like if I'm stuck on sort of an actual problem, I'll read a bunch of books. I'll actually go through my TBR list, which is a thing that I love doing and never do. Well, I never got the chance to do it, but I always love going through my TBR list. So sometimes I'll just I'll go through like the first 5 books on my list in like a flurry of reading, and that'll normally get me inspired. Video games also do help me get inspired. I will just play video games for hours on end. Don't look at my like late. Steam will tell you. Steam tells you how long you spend in a video game, and it is the most accusatory shit.
No one needs to know.
Nobody needs to know that.
Know that. But I do that as well. I think there's something, particularly because I prefer to play RPGs. I think there's
absolutely
about the act of engaging with a narrative because playing a video game is a more active engagement with a narrative than, say, watching a show or a movie, but you're still not having to think particularly hard. Something about that sweet spot of active but not too active helps my brain percolate. Like if I'm turning over ideas and the little idea goblin trying to assemble things.
Oh, absolutely.
In the hindbrain. That I find very, very helpful. All right, question.
Yeah, I had that with Destiny 2 a lot for Bluebird. Although now I'm playing Final Fantasy 14 and the narrative is so good that I am spending like 120% of my brain power engaging with the narrative. So it's not really helping with the whole like, oh, I'll just play this to distract myself from writing thing. But I love it a lot.
Yeah, I need to play Final Fantasy 14. It's so like
good.
Have
you heard of the critically acclaimed MMO Final Fantasy 14?
That's the thing is I've never been an MMO person because I've never been a PC gamer. I've always played on consoles. And so for ages, I just sort of assumed that was a Final Fantasy that I couldn't play, but apparently it is now available on
it's available on console. A lot more MMORPGs are available on console than you think. Like Destiny 2, that's on console.
Good to know.
And actually Destiny 1 is exclusively on console, so I've never been able to play it because I don't own a console. Which is very sad.
All right, so we've got another question in the chat. What book are you reading now?
I've actually just started Beasts of Prey, but I'm barely into it, so
Ayana
please
Gray,
nobody
right?
spoil anything.
Is that Ayana Gray's?
Yes. Yeah, nobody spoil anything. I'm barely into it because I've been so busy, but I really want to finish it. And yeah, don't spoil, please.
I haven't read it, so I can't spoil it, but I have heard very good things. Okay, do we have any other questions from the chat, or should we just carry on as we're doing it? I don't think we've got any other questions as yet.
Yeah, I think we've been answering them as we go along.
Yes. I actually, at the moment, I've just started reading an ARC of Silk Fire by Zazara, and it's really, really good. Very, very chewy world building, big world building, and also queer romance. So I'm.
Oh, I love that. That's a great combo.
Deeply into it already. Somebody.
Neither. Twilight sucks, and it ruined the vampire genre, and I will forever be mad about that because the first book I tried to pitch was a vampire book, and it couldn't sell because Twilight ruined vampires. I'm sorry. That is
this is in response to your question, which is Team Jacob or Edward.
I was in middle school when Twilight started coming out. Do you understand how much it ruined my life? Nobody in my middle school wanted to talk about anything besides Twilight, and it was terrible, and I was so mad about it.
At the moment,
I have no repressed rage about this whatsoever.
I don't know if you've been to a bookshop recently, but they have recently re-released the Twilight books, and they've given them new covers. And what that functionally means is that they've put the original covers like into a scanner, and they've scaled them up about 25% so they don't quite fit on the cover. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life.
That's so dumb. Oh my god.
It's like, no, because it's like the word Twilight, and it goes twi, and the I is literally half off the edge of the cover, and then it goes to the new line, and it's got a whole I, it. And they do, like, there's only two of them that don't have a letter falling off the side of the cover, only to be repeated down the bottom in full. And it's like, what is the point of that? If you're going to put it, like, if you're going to put the whole letter on the next line anyway, why do you have the little bit hanging off the edge like a fucking teenager did?
What's that meme? Graphic design is my passion.
It's exactly that. And it is what those books deserve, let's be real. But it's...
Oh, I completely agree with you on that one. Sorry for Twilight fans in chat, but...
It's just like, I don't understand the person who looked at that, like, unless it's somebody who was being made to do it under duress. Saying we need, for financial contractual reasons, to re-release the Twilight books, and you've got some beleaguered person there just going, fine, it's done. And then, but then presumably like a team of people had to look at it and go, yes, that looks good, that is correct, and it's really it's so bad.
Sometimes it's just people don't know how stuff looks. I don't understand it. Like a video game that I used to play more and now have left. Also a BioWare game, Star Wars The Old Republic. They apparently released their new expansion, 7.0, and from what I've seen, they redid all the class icons from like colorful ones of like, someone's holding a lightsaber or like someone's got like, a blaster or whatever, into these blank gray and white 2D, completely flat, hideous looking icons that no one can tell apart and that are so generic and terrible. And I'm like, who the hell did this? Did they go back to like 2010 when they were first making the game before they had a proper fully staffed design team and just took their like shitty placeholder logos or whatever?
This is what you're doing. This is what you're doing with your time, instead of, for instance, remaking the Knights of the Old Republic RPGs available
exactly
again with the ability to romance everybody bisexually. This is what you're doing with your time, instead of making it so I can romance Carthanassi as a dude.
I've been writing this thing for it's like an article talking about queer romance in 2 video games, both of which are currently ongoing, MMORPGs. Both have their new expansions coming out in February, and one was Star Wars The Old Republic, and the other was Destiny 2, and I was kind of talking about the different routes you can go with queer romance, and I discovered some shit. Apparently, Star Wars The Old Republic was originally going to have queer relationships because there are partially voiced queer relationship storylines still in the game files. They just were like, yeah, we're never going to put those in the game. They're there, but you can't actually play them. And I'm like, what the hell?
Well, this is like with Cullen used to be a bi romance in Dragon Age, and it's like, why? And then
they changed it for stupid reasons. They were like, oh yeah, anyway, Cullen was bi, but now you can only date him if you're human or Dalish. And it's like, why that restriction? Like,
because Cullen's the kind of bi.
We need Kunari rights. We need Kunari rights. That's what we need.
We need Kunari rights. But Cullen, if he existed in the modern world, would have no fats, no femmes in his Grindr profile. Like that's.
God, you're right. God, you're so right.
That's what you're functionally telling us with this. We've got 2 more questions.
Yes.
One, what is your favorite thing about the Bluebird cover?
I really like, this is going to sound weird, but see how there's this like bright streak through the middle? I really like that. I really gravitated towards the sort of feathers design, and I really liked the way that the cover artist made that like pop and added that kind of lens flare almost.
Someone has also asked, the same person, can you pitch us your vampire book?
Vampire book is sort of a pseudo-Victorian Gothic vampire escape room, almost.
Ooh, vampire escape room.
Yeah, lots of sword fights, polyamory, a truly incredibly angry protagonist who is there to kill people and fuck shit up and solve the escape room.
Nice.
I know none of that makes sense. I'm really sorry.
That's all right. So I've actually, my first books were vampire books, technically. It was meant to be a trilogy. Unfortunately, the local publisher who picked them up in Australia didn't end up taking the third one. But yeah, that was like post Twilight again, but me trying to sort of engage with vampires on my own terms. Teen vampire runs away from home, finds other teens with magical abilities. Hinky vampire / magical shenanigans go down, all that kind of thing.
All the best stuff.
But have you looked, so this presumably, when did you write the vampire draft?
So I wrote the vampire draft in spring of 2018. I wrote it very quickly. It was originally fan fiction, but it was like a couple video game characters mixed in a different setting, and most of the cast were original characters anyway, and it had no relation whatsoever to any of the fan fiction, like the original media I pulled it from. So I finished, and I was like, wait, this isn't even tangentially fan fiction. This was just some random shit my brain spat out. And then I was like, random shit my brain spat out. I know that's a job some people have. So I went back and I changed the names of like the, I don't know, 2 or 3 canon characters that wasn't my giant cast of OCs, and polished it up a bit, sent it off to, and I tried to query it. And actually my current agent requested my full for that, and she got back to me and was like, this is really good, but vampires can't be sold right now. Like, sucks. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. Twilight ruined everything. So once I got Bluebird out, I was chatting with my agent again about like, oh, what's my next thing going to be? And she was like, you could go back to that vampire thing because vampires are now getting more and more sellable. And I was like, oh, yes, I can go back to that vampire thing. So I went back and once again completely rewrote it. It is vastly different from any early incarnation of what it was, but so hopefully it's better.
I always think this is really fascinating as a thing, as a writer, because so this is my perspective on it. But the act of finishing a book, the act of writing a book, turns you into a person who would not have written it, or at least would not have written it that way, because you constantly level up. Or, you know, and it's not necessarily like constantly you go up, up, up. Sometimes you're going across, so you're constantly developing. But it means that this is something I think a lot of people who come into writing or come into creative fields kind of grapple with and don't necessarily have a language for grappling with it at the beginning. It's because and I think this is where that dissatisfaction, that constant writerly dissatisfaction with what you've written comes from, because you finish something, and because you finished it, you're no longer the person you were when you started it, which means your standards for what it should be, for what it should look like, have changed. So inevitably you go back, and at some point you have to pull yourself out of the cycle of re-editing and changing it to fit the new version of you, because that's not a static version of you. You're still gonna get to the end of it and go, oh, but what if? Oh, but what if? So it's kind of like freezing like a version of your past self in amber at a certain point and saying that's what it was.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I wrote most of Bluebird. I wrote Bluebird in 2019, and you know, I did some edits in 2021. Oh, and 2020 when it sold.
So this is a pre-pandemic book in that sense.
Yes, and then I wrote it before the pandemic, and then I actually, my agent gave me my offer like a week into lockdown. And I was like, oh, yep. Not knowing that we'd still be in the middle of this bullshit
Nearly
2 years
3 years
later.
later.
Yeah, nearly. God, time passage of I hate it.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. Like, so the book I meant to say this when I did my intro at the beginning. I have a book coming out in July, which is a queer fantasy romance called Strange and Stubborn Endurance.
Hell
I'm very
yeah.
excited about it. But that, I mean, technically I started writing that in 2015, but in terms of it's technically a pandemic book in the sense that I was working on it all through 2020. So but it wasn't inspired by that because I already had started it and been sort of nibbling at it for a few years beforehand. And I'm actually kind of grateful for that in retrospect, because I think if I'd been trying to write something from scratch after we'd sort of gotten through the first month of the pandemic and realized, oh no, this is just how it is now. Whatever I'd written there, I think would be very different to what I actually did write.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel bad for anybody who was writing like a zombie apocalypse or some kind of, sci-fi, there's been a plague outbreak book before 2020 and then tried to sell it. Like, well, I mean, I feel so bad for those people.
It's like this constant thing about how The Onion is basically being put out of a job by the ridiculousness of real life politics. So I know a writer, British sort of sci-fi writer, Nick Harkaway, spent years writing Nomen, which is his sort of slow creep of fascism in the UK book. And then him tweeting like, what was the point in my doing years of research and writing this intricately crafted sort of subtle rise of fascism when the real thing is so cartoonishly stupid?
Yep. What was that tweet from like a reporter who's like, I've spent months researching this, and he just tweeted it out.
God, pour one out for that guy at the time. He was clearly just, I spent so long, and he's just tweeted it.
Just tweeted it out.
What do I do? But I think that this is actually in some, when we're trying to find the glass half empty aspects of the fuckery that we live with currently, I think one thing to be grateful for, well, not grateful for, that we can at least sort of point at, is for those of us who make shit up for a living, the bar of what counts as realistic has lowered significantly.
Yep.
Like, there have been so many things that have happened where if you looked at them, if you'd seen them in a book, and I've seen so many writers tweeting about this at various points in the past, nearly 3 years. Or actually, no, since 2016, really. But saying,
I wonder why.
I wonder what happened in 2016. Anyway, but people looking at it and going, if I wrote this, it would be considered gauche, and it would be considered unrealistic and ham-fisted and just on the nose, like too ridiculous. But that has just been everything.
Yep.
Sort of, what is it, like 5-6 years now? It is 6 years. It's 6 years now.
Yeah, 6 years. God, time, flat circle.
It's, yeah, everything is a flat circle, and we're going back to, I don't even know anymore, that we're inventing new geometries of time and space to figure out what we're going to do.
I mean, March of 2020 was basically about 2 decades, and then April didn't exist. And then time has just been kind of a blur since then.
Very wibbly wobbly. Again, It's the Hotel California of pandemics. We can check out of it any time we like, but we can never leave.
Never leave.
A certain percentage of people won't put on masks or vaccinate, and instead keep trying to bring down the government for reasons.
I went to Boulder for like a writers conference back in the fall, and we like me and my girlfriend who went with me, we went to like a mall, and we're just wandering around, like looking for places to eat and shop and all that. And people weren't wearing masks. It was a big mall filled with people, all of whom were just not wearing masks. And I was like, I don't believe all of you are vaccinated. It was wild, because I'm coming from the Bay Area, which is very, everywhere makes you mask up. No one will let you in if you don't have a mask. There are places I've gone to where you have to show proof of vaccination to be allowed in. Like some restaurants are like, give us your vaccination card or else you can't come in.
We're just going to note, so because we've had a thing running throughout the course of this, which we probably should have advertised.
Well, yeah, we should have addressed that.
Okay.
Whoops.
We should have said there was a giveaway when you're leaving a question to enter, but the winner has now been Eamon F, who's asked
congratulations.
Question. So congratulations. Get in touch with Desla at angryrobotbooks.com with your address and phone number to receive your copy of Bluebird, which is fantastic. So I think we're coming nearish to the end now. I think we've got about 5-10 minutes to go.
Yes.
So if anyone had, now that I understand that the if anyone has a lightning round of questions, they can do that. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to talk what we're talking about.
About the plague we all live under.
Yes. The joy of the plague years in which we in which we live in. I was about to say, but then that's Paul McCartney. That's Live and Let Die.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's a little depressing.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I hadn't quite realized, but yet no, that is depressing.
No, I actually I took about a year and a half off of college with the plague. And the one good thing is that it gave me a ton of time to write.
It's yeah, I mean, it's very there. I mean, overall, it's been horrific, and it's every time I always feel like there needs to be this caveat, but also like you don't need to say the caveat out loud. That when you're saying, "Oh, but I was able to do a good thing in the pandemic," it's like we shouldn't have to clarify. And yes, I understand that the pandemic is back. We know. We
all know.
They're trying desperately to find tiny scraps of comfort and meaning and positivity in a morass of bad.
Yeah. I was actually shocked by how long it took me to rewrite my vampire thing, because that took me I don't know, like 9 months maybe. And normally I write very, very quickly. I write a lot very fast. It is a problem. Most of it is fan fiction. Let's not talk about how many words are on my AO3 account.
Let's that. Nobody needs to know that.
Nobody needs to know that.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Nobody needs to know that I wrote a 1.4 million word fan fiction. No one needs to know that. But so I'm used to writing a lot.
Frantically deleting AO3 tabs.
Yeah, like no one can know. No, I'm not popular on AO3. I write for very small fandoms, so whatever. No one's finding me. And also, there's like, I don't know, 7 million word long fan fictions on AO3. I haven't gone that far. I'm not that insane. But I'm used to writing a lot very quickly, and I'm used to working on multiple projects at once. So it really did shock me that I took like 9 months about to rewrite this vampire thing.
Yeah, I think this is something, and I think everybody needs to be kind to themselves about this, because a lot of people have been looking at the pandemic. If you've got in one respect, it can feel for some of us, like we've got, less to do because we don't have a commute if we're working, if we're used to working in an office, or, if we're used to going into campus for study or for school. And there are a lot of very irritating people sort of being chirpily like, yes, you should be using the pandemic time to learn a new language and develop all of these new life skills and get really fit. And it's like, actually, no, we're all living through something extremely traumatic. And under those circumstances, physically, you're going to need rest and you're going to need to relax and decompress. And some people do that by throwing themselves into a new project, but that's not everybody's way of dealing with it. And yet I think there has become a culture of not necessarily guilt, but constant worry that we're falling behind, that we're not doing enough, that things are taking longer than they should. And I think it behooves us all to breathe.
Yeah.
And be a little kinder about how long it's taking us to do things.
We live in this weird, like, grind culture where everything you do, even for fun, people are like, oh, monetize that. Like, oh, you like, making jewelry. Have you considered selling that on Etsy? Like, people always
is the dirt worst.
I know. It's always like, oh, monetize something you find fun. like everything you do should be furthering something, you know, some kind of financial goal or increasing your like resume or whatever. And it creates this weird culture where if you do things just for funsies, you feel kind of guilty about it.
And this is pyrite, basically, to bring it
exactly.
This is pyrite. We are living in pyrite, which is
I have no real world inspiration in anything I write ever.
It is very depressing, but hopefully it's going to change, if only because the world is going to force it to change, because that is the nature of time and cycles in history, is that nothing endures forever, even when it really, really wants to, like an empire.
I am being asked to pitch my vampire book in chat.
Yes.
I'll try to pitch it based on not vibes. Let me try to do a really fast, quick pitch. So our protagonist, Kazan Korvik, is a human. She is a swordsmith, and she specializes in making weapons that specifically kill vampires. This is going great for her until she ends up getting captured by vampires, and she is stuck in this fancy vampire manor, and it's the middle of this fabulous 3-day party, and at the end of 3 days, she will be ritually eaten. And so she has 3 days to figure a way out. I don't want to say shenanigans ensue because it is not as lighthearted.
Ensues?
It's not lighthearted, but there is definitely a threesome scene that I had a lot of fun writing, and a lot of murder, a lot of. I think I described it once as exactly as grotesque as it is sensual.
That's good, because this is the thing I think I'm angriest at Twilight about, is taking the sexiness out of vampires.
Honestly, okay, here's where Twilight went wrong. Stephanie Meyer did not lean into the monster fucker importance of vampires, and instead she just kind of wanted to kiss a Mormon superhero. That is where she went wrong. Vampires are about monster fucking.
I remember vividly, because I didn't know, so I think I've only read the first book, and I read it like at the time to just be like, okay, whatever. But I remember seeing a quote from Twilight that someone had excerpted online, where it's like describing Bella as wearing sort of like a collared blouse.
I know exactly the quote you're talking about.
And Edward talking about how hot she is, and somebody had captioned it going, "The Mormon jumped out."
Yep. That is where Twilight went wrong. Yes. If you're writing a good classic vampire book,
horny, and calling her cocaine is not horny, it's just really disturbed.
Yes, the khaki skirt.
The khaki skirt. Yes, it wasn't denim. You're right. It was khaki.
I remember when I was writing this vampire threesome scene, my beta reader commented on like, oh, you know, like here's like it was at the end of the chapter, so it was commenting on the whole chapter, and she was like, oh, I think, you know, you have this cat in part of this. Here's like my comments on cat body language. Also, the blood play was really hot. And so yeah, there we go.
Well, given if the Zazara are absolutely not cats in Bluebird,
no, they're not.
Presumably, it's a similar comment could be made.
I definitely don't frequently write characters transforming into cats or otherwise being related to cats. That's the other thing. In my vampire thing, there is a character who can transform into a swarm of bats, because every single vampire book that's like, oh, well, vampires can't transform into bats. I know that's a classic element of vampire stories.
Cowards!
Cowards!
All right, I think we've now hit the 1 hour mark.
I believe so.
So I think this is where we wrap things up and we say thank you. Well, we're all very excited about Bluebird. Crime-doing lesbians in space, fighting capitalism and theocracy, and doing so with guns called panache and pizzazz, which is amazing.
Thank you.
And we will all be very eagerly anticipating whatever you write next, especially if it happens to be a hot vampire book.
I really hope it's the hot vampire book. That'd be nice.
With with polyamory. So I'm not sure. I'm not the person in charge of the camera and the recording, but I think we're just now
I'm like, I don't know either.
But thank you everybody for joining us. It's been really lovely to have you here. It's been lovely to have an engaged chat, asking questions and keeping us going.
Thank you for the hashtag engagement.
So thank you very much. It has been lovely, and I hope you all enjoy Bluebird.
I hope you guys like it.